Okay, thank you, Carrie. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the town board work session of Wednesday, March 15th, postponed from yesterday due to weather, so we appreciate everybody for being flexible with us. Can I have a motion to open the work session, please?
Motion to open work session. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, so we are going to start, we are very excited, hearing about our recreation master plan. This is really a blueprint that's gonna tell us sort of what we wanna focus on going forward in terms of our recreation and parks department. So we have our recreation supervisor here, so Ike, you wanna take it away?
Sure. Will do my best to talk into the microphone so that's recorded. And sorry for everybody, my back to you, I apologize. Let me just get this up quick. Let's see if we can get this up on the screen. All right. Well, we're off to a good start, at least that's showing up there. So, take that, baby steps. Obviously, thank you to the town board for having us here tonight. I do want to start off by thanking Kellen, Christine, and Sabrina, and obviously everybody else that had a hand in this endeavor over the last 2 years or so, 2.5. Yeah, I think we started this actually just before COVID decided to kick in. So it's certainly been a work in progress, but thank you to everybody that's been helping out along the way. I will, so what we're gonna do tonight is go over a basic outline of the plan. I'm not gonna go through all 100 and whatever pages of the plan tonight. We will certainly keep it short and sweet, keep it to an outline. Obviously, if you have any questions, let me know as we go through this. So the first few slides will just be kind of just an outline of the town, some basic information, and then we'll get into the meat and potatoes, everything. So this was all part of the inventory process. Obviously, a big part of the plan was establishing some of the details of the town and who we service. Over 14,000 acres. The big thing for us is over 18,000 residents that we try to service throughout the year with a variety of programs and special events. Let's see, next one. So this next slide is an outline of all of the open space and park properties in town, just to kind of give you a visual of some of the properties that we maintain through our department. Pretty much anything in green that's green in town, we have a hand in maintaining or taking care of, from islands and parks to cemeteries to just plain town open space. So keeps us a bit busy.
Even county parks?
We don't do county parks, so town-owned properties. That's just to kind of give you an idea of what the open space is in town and what properties are in town. Here are the parks that we have in Newcastle that we maintain on a daily basis and throughout the year. Oops, I won't jump from there. So a quick breakdown. Our parks total just about 760 acres. We have just over 16 parks and facilities that we maintain that make up that 760 acres. 3 indoor facilities that we offer programs at. The community center here in town, the art center, and the Chappaqua Performing Arts Center. We do run some programs up there. And we are year-round between our special events and our programs. We're 12 months a year, so we enjoy it. Keeps us busy, that's for sure. The comprehensive plan, this was obviously something that the town had gone through. Actually, when I just started here, I know Sabrina was neck deep in it at that point. But a lot of the goals in the comprehensive plan pertain to Parks and Rec. One of those that was in the comp plan and also brought up with our rec commission was the need for a new master plan. And that was really the catalyst to where we are now, to start this process and get this document where it needs to be. And I think we're happy with it at this point. So what's next? What is the master plan? As Supervisor Katz mentioned before, it's going to be our guiding document for the next 7 to 10 years. Programming, facilities, and it really outlined the voice of our residents and what they're looking for, and things that we can improve on and things that they would like to see. So that's the whole basis of the master plan, is to kind of give us a roadmap over the next 7 to 10 years and when it comes to planning and programming. The planning process. So as you can see, we started back in 2020, taking an inventory of everything: facilities, programming, events, staffing, which then went into outreach and visioning. So outreach was reaching out to the public. We had formed a subcommittee at that time that from a wide variety of residents in town, from youth. Lisa's son at that time was on our subcommittee. We had representation from seniors and all the way in between. So it was really a good group. We worked with the Pace Land Use group as well to help us in kind of forming the outreach that we did for the master plan. Obviously, you have to do something with all that information that we gathered over the last 2 years. The analysis, the breakdown, really seeing what the feedback was from everybody involved, putting that into the plan, and then obviously now we're at the point where hopefully that plan will get adopted and we'll be able to move forward into the future. Inventory. So this was a big part of the process. A lot of man hours. Thank you, Kellen. He was knee deep in that with us throughout the process. So it was really just getting an idea, like I mentioned before, of all the park resources that we have, programming and events throughout the year. This next slide is just a quick snapshot of that information. We offer a lot of programs every season throughout the year. Not all those programs run, but we do like to put out a lot of options for our residents and see what sticks, right? And then we'll roll with it from there. We're constantly evaluating that. Special events, we're up to 10 now, and that doesn't include our senior events that Christine handles. I feel like we almost have a senior event every month at this point. But these are our 10 big special events that we do, starting next week with our egg hunt, which will actually be outside of Town Hall this year because of the work going on at Getney Park. So we will have 10,000 eggs on rec field next Saturday. And I can guarantee they will disappear faster than Tots Camp sold out. But that will start next year, and we roll right through to the bonfire, or end of the year bonfire, holiday bonfire in December. So we'll kick off our special event season next week. And then sports and youth sports programming, we do this year round. We actually just finished up a great successful youth basketball season, thanks to one of our supervisors, Jamie Bucci, putting that on this year. We had a really good turnout, a lot of positive feedback with that. Hence the tie, I got the basketball tie on tonight, gotta represent the
tournament.
well, it is too. It's twofold. Go a little green. We got St. Patrick's Day rolling up in a couple of days. I gotta get in the spirit. And we work with all the youth sports organizations in town, whether they use our fields or not. We're constantly in touch with all the different groups in town. Park profiles. This was a breakdown of all of the parks in town. Some of these maps have been updated. We've done a lot of work over the last 2 years in some trail work between Burden Preserve, Whippoorwill, Glacier, and most recently Warburg. Have all got a bit of a facelift with our trails this year. And that was all part of this process, right? I mean, as we're going through developing the master plan, and when you take these inventories, you really get a good look at an inside look at how your parks are performing. So it spurred a lot of the work that we're doing now. And we updated on the left is an abbreviated version of the amenities description that we have on our website, and gives a quick glance at what each park offers. Outreach, so here's some pictures from some of the outreach that was done. flashback to when we had to wear masks everywhere we went. But we did Community Day, we did some outreach here. We actually did public presentations here in the community center, which were actually pretty well attended. We did online surveys. We had these surveys and some of the yard signs plastered in all our parks. The big thing, as it's highlighted here on the slide, is the amount of responses that we received. I really had no idea what we were going to get when we started trying to survey the residents, what kind of feedback and how much feedback we would get. So we were really happy that we had such a big turnout with survey responses. A lot of good information. And you'll see some of that here. So on the left, you'll see why was kind of one of the questions in the survey. Why do you attend our parks? Why do you attend our programs? A little breakdown there. Trails is a big thing, as you'll see in one of our slides later on. But trails, youth sports, exercise were kind of some of the bigger hits as to why people come to our facilities and parks. The breakdown on the right is what people wanted, what they thought that Newcastle needed or they would like to see. The big thing was an indoor-outdoor pool. That really topped the charts. Next thing was an indoor or multi-purpose community center, I think, which would be great. If we had the space for that, that would be fantastic. Just because we could be more self-reliant. We wouldn't have to rely on other facilities to provide space for us. So that would be a huge help. And one of the other big things on here was an indoor field, kind of along the same thing as turfing our fields or a field. But yeah, so these were some of the feedback that we received from the residents throughout our survey. And this is all documented in the master plan under the goals and recommendations. Here's one of our outreach stakeholder participation, another picture of us giving our presentations to before, actually, when we just get started with the master plan, to try to get some of that feedback in person. Then the analysis of all the information that we received, which we kind of covered already, just the updated trail mapping, program needs assessment, all that good stuff that you get from the information. So here are some of the big numbers that came from all of the tracking that we did. Getney Park really kind of blew me out of the water. I knew we had a lot of traffic there. I didn't realize it was that much, but over 200,000 cars pass through that park every year, which is kind of insane. But it's great. It means we have a great facility. It means people that really want to use it. So that was nice to see. Our trail system, and we started this actually pre-COVID, during COVID, and after COVID, and these numbers have really kind of stayed the same. It's peaked a little bit during COVID, obviously, because everybody's home and getting out, but these numbers have really been consistent with the amount of usage that our trails see throughout the year. Whippoorwill Park being the big one, with over 2,500 visits a month, and then Glacier not too far behind. So you can kind of see in the bar graph there how each park fares, but they see a lot of action, a lot of traction, which was all nice. It's like, hey, great, people are using our stuff more than we think. It's good. So plan preparation, obviously this whole thing was a joint effort between the Parks Commission, town staff, all of us have been heavily involved throughout the last couple of years. So the meat and potatoes of the plan, we kind of got through all of that. These were the goals that were set in place, established when we started working on the plan. We had 5 goals: plan for the future, protect and manage existing parks, provide quality programming, engage and inform the public, and utilize and improve open spaces and facilities were the main 5 goals that we identified. What I'll do in the next slides are all a breakdown of the recommendations for each of those goals. I'm not going to go through all of them, just because I don't want to keep you here till midnight. I'm sure you guys would appreciate that. But I'll mention a couple, and if there's anything that you see up there that you want to ask me specifically about, we'll just fire away. Yeah, get rid of that. What did I do? Jump?
You jumped.
I hit it one too many times. There we go. Send some slides here.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Let's see if they're, no. All right, give me 1 second.
Give it to Dave.
And we're doing so well. Just rolling through that. Let's see, let's do.
Guess rec doesn't offer any computer courses.
So
I'm just a rec guy.
while you're looking for that, I know that this has been ongoing for years, and I just want to thank you for doing such a great and inclusive job. I know I attended some of the planning sessions, and as you said, I know my son was on the master plan steering committee and made us walk every single park many times. And I know the amount of outreach that went into this and the amount of analysis, and I'm just thrilled because we've been looking for this so that we can understand our goals and how we can provide for our residents in terms of increased accessibility for parks, programming, everything else. So I want to thank you all in advance for putting this together. I know it was so much work, and I know all of us on the town board really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
It's been quite the learning experience, that's for sure. Including PowerPoint. It's showing on there, right?
Yeah, you're good.
That's where we need a TV timeout. Show some commercials. Everybody,
We can go back to the
That's why
replay.
we have commercials.
yeah, right? There we go. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Appreciate it. That's why I stick to Parks and Rec. All right, so goal 1, plan for the future. As you can see, it was quite a list of recommendations that came out of this research over the last couple of years. One of the things that always kind of jumps out to me, I mean, you can see what between staff and the rec commission and the residents, what was prioritized and what everybody kind of thought high, low, ongoing. One of the things I always jump to on here is the create a town trail development and maintenance master plan. Not that I want to go through another master plan, as much fun as this was, but to a slimmed down version to where we kind of put a plan into place when it comes to trail maintenance, because we're on it every year and we inspect the trails, but just with the amount of usage that it gets, to have a proactive plan in place is something that I would like to look into over the next year or so. And obviously, some of the things you'll see that were on the last survey, explore the feasibility of an indoor-outdoor pool, things like that we took directly off of the surveys that we received from the residents. There was also the dog park at the bottom. This is always a hot topic.
I'm glad to see that.
Yeah.
See it.
So going on to goal number 2, protect. Oh, settle down. Come on. There we go. Protect, manage, and maintain existing parks and open spaces. Obviously, continue doing what we're doing. I think, if I am going to brag a little bit, I think our Parks Department is awesome. I think they've done a phenomenal job since I've been here over the last 4 or 5 years. We've put a good team together there. Our foreman takes a lot of pride in the work we do there. They do a great job maintaining the existing parks. We're always very receptive to the feedback we get from our residents. But there are some things that we'll work with, both with the Conservation Department and one of the things up there is the Vine Squad. So just kind of expanding what we're working on and where our focuses are through parks. Provide quality programming, which obviously we already do. Humble brag. But we're always looking to improve, obviously. The events that we've done and continue to try to split up between the hamlets. So we're covering both sides of town. The variety of events and programming that we have, staff is constantly analyzing what we're offering and getting feedback and seeing how different programs perform. So just a couple of the things from that list. Engage and inform the public. We do advertise. We're always looking for new ways to do so. One of the things that came up through the conversation, I know it was part of the comp plan, some of the things that came up through our senior activity group is basically improve upon the inventory and the dissemination for our social services. And Bess Steiger, who is our social worker now, she does a great job, and she's been doing that since she got here. So it's again one of those things that that's why what was great about this process is getting all this feedback and identifying what we're doing and what we can improve on. And then the same thing, more stuff with the connections to maximize resident visitor benefit. So how we can tie all of this together, and this is where some of these things come in. Amsterdam Park, because of summer camp, it's been a great location for us for the last few years since we've had summer camp up there. So to keep improving on that facility, to just make it a better overall experience for our campers that are there. Again, going back to one of the survey answers, looking at all our fields see a lot of traffic, but looking at ones that might be good candidates to transfer over to turf. So that's listed in here as well. Just a couple of, this was a big one actually, I'll go for a couple pages. So plan approval, that's where we're at now. Good news with the seeker evaluation, it's type 2, so no further action needed for that. So that was nice little time saver there. Obviously town board, you will have time to review the plan, and then at some point set a public hearing, and then after that we'll hopefully adopt the plan. So questions, comments, concerns?
I have a question.
Yes.
When you say short term, medium term, and long term, what mostly for short and medium, what are the timeframes that you're looking at?
So medium is less than 5 years, I would say. Short term, we're looking at the next year or two to try to make those changes.
Thanks.
Yep.
So I just wanted to thank everybody that worked on this, Kellen, Sabrina, Ike, Christine, and everybody on the Parks and Rec Commission. I've been the liaison in the last couple of months, just listening to everybody talk about how excited they were and how much work went into this. I'm very grateful. And I think we have a wonderful Parks and Rec department. I can't wait to see us take it up a notch with the master plan. So just for everybody's understanding, how did we determine what was a high priority, a low priority, a medium priority?
It was, again, it really was like this whole process was a collaboration. So we took the feedback that we received through all the surveys and the open meetings and that, and then brought that to the Rec Commission, staff, and it was really just an open conversation of, okay, well, this is what the residents think, here's what the commission thinks, yeah, we're all on the same page, okay, great, and that's where and that's really how the discussion took place. But we put a lot of value into the feedback that we received from the residents. That was kind of the driving force on a lot of that.
Great.
No, I should have said thank you as well. I've been
Oh.
looking forward to this since I filled out the survey, so.
You were the
Well,
one
thank
that
you.
requested the
Thank you
dog
for
park.
filling out the survey. We
That was
appreciate that.
Pepper, but yes.
Yeah, well, everyone's thanked you so adequately. I feel like I just ditto what everyone said in your thanks and gratitude for everything you've been doing. I'm just curious about your findings on programming, and I was curious specifically about which parts of the population you thought might be underserved. I know you have a lot of youth programming and we have the senior center. Did you find that the middle segment of our population, the adults, wanted more programs, or are they maybe too busy with work or kids, or where did you find the gaps were?
There's two actually, and it's always one of the hardest. Two of the hardest groups for us to always reach. It's the teens, right? So your 8th and 9th, 10th graders, that's where we kind of lose them after that a little bit. So it's addressing that. Our programming for middle school age kids has gotten a lot stronger over the last couple of years. So we've made improvements there, and then it's the adults. Outside of adult basketball and adult softball, like those are strong programs. But outside of that, it's always tough because obviously they don't want to be looped in with the senior group.
Yeah.
right? And then you have even the seniors that are a bit more active that, you know, want programs that are more active, and not really senior based. So it's always trying to find that healthy balance. So I would say those two groups are usually, and that feedback match that, so.
Okay, and are you targeting those groups for?
We've been targeting, we've really focused on middle school and kind of that teenage group over the last couple of years. And one of our most recent hire, Dan, he worked with that group specifically in his previous job, so he's been kind of brainstorming a little bit on things that he can do. And then the adult programming, yeah, it's something that we're going to focus on. We've tried to add that kind of programming in there, but it's tricky. It's tough finding that balance, so.
I'll just add, was looking back at our emails from 2020, 2021, when Ivy was supervisor, about our priorities for the upcoming year, and this was in 2021, recognizing the importance of the master plan for recreation and park, or park and recreation, as some would say. But it's really a testament to all of you to make it happen, and it's important that we set our agenda and set our goals and actually see it through, and this is a great example.
Yeah.
It's not done yet in terms of implementing it, but to get us to this stage where you have something that's really concrete to move forward and everybody collaborated to make it happen, it's a real testament to staff, to all of you and the people on the rec commission. So I really want to thank you for making this happen, and all of you for making it happen. It's really a fabulous thing for this community.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and it's great to have this document now. I mean, this will really be a
It's only as
concrete.
good as only as good as the people behind it and
Right.
actually taking action, and that's the point of this. And yes, it's critically important to have it, but you are the people that make it happen. So
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah, it's completely a team effort. You know, everybody was involved, so it was, and it was a great team. I'm glad we have everybody on board for it.
Thanks. And to Jeremy's point, so part of our goals and objectives for this year, some of them were saying, well, we're gonna wait and see what the master plan says, the rec master plan says. So now that we have this, it's wonderful, and I know the board's gonna study it, and then
Plenty of good
with
reading. Plenty of good reading.
study it, we're gonna study. And then you know, with you and everyone else, we'll sit down and figure out which of the recommendations should be our priorities, at least for this year. And I know you've put them into short-term, long-term, and high priority.
Yep.
And we'll go over that with you to figure out what kind of we can start to really put money behind to figure out how we can implement them.
Great.
Yeah.
Also, I just want to mention that some of the results here are going to be useful in areas other than recs, parks and recs, because we'll be looking at our public spaces,
Mhm.
right? And so I see that there's a big demand for, you know, a center, a community center.
Mhm.
So
Yes,
that,
yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
it could translate to other areas of what the town board ends up doing, possibly.
Possibly, right.
Like
So you're
looking at
saying
our-
there's a chance?
Yes.
So one of the nice things
I don't want to get ahead of,
One in a million.
One in a million.
So one of the many nice things about the rec master plan is it's a foundational document for staff to be able to identify those high priorities and to see where grant opportunities lie. And that's something that maybe we could, you know, steal Sabrina's talents a little bit
More.
more.
A little bit more.
To help us identify where those funding opportunities might be, because it's great that we've identified them, but if we could put some money behind them and actually bring them to fruition, that would be fabulous. So
I would be
it'll-
completely on board with that.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I
Great
didn't know
job.
if you
Bye, all.
guys wanted to jump in?
Good
No?
job.
Okay, all
All
right.
right, anyone else have any questions? All right, well, thank you, and I know we have a link to it, so we'll be putting that up on our website,
Yes.
and it'll be in the newsletter that's going out tomorrow as well, so all residents can click on and
View it, yeah.
We think they'll open up public comment.
so we need to, I mean, I guess our next steps are we need to review it and then we have to set a public hearing, correct? So, do we
Thank
wanna
you.
do that now? Thank you, Ike.
I think the board has to review it first. I mean, it can be, you know, as quick as the board reviewing it next week and us setting it, setting it for a public hearing on the 28th, or
Yeah.
If
I mean, honestly, I can't imagine that the board's gonna have substantive changes to the rec master plan, so let's plan, next week is not a work session, it's a public meeting, so let's plan to consider it next week. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Appreciate it.
you.
All right, really appreciate it, everybody.
Big step.
All right, well, you guys enjoy the rest of your evening.
No, we insist.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice.
All right, so now we are going to turn to the North Greeley net zero carbon legislation. Ed, do you want to start us off?
Happy to. So a revised or red line version of the proposed local laws in the packet before you tonight. And I thought before I walk the board through the red line, it might be helpful just to talk about how we got here. And the timeline and the process that's been followed. So I'll go back to September 20th of last year. That's when the town received a zoning petition from the property owner asking for a zoning change. And that was accompanied by some materials showing the proposed building, really on a conceptual level. It was not a site plan application, it was a zone change petition, and that's important. We can talk a little bit more about that. Then on November 22nd of last year, the town board referred the draft local law to Westchester County Planning Board and Newcastle Planning Board. And that was after revisions had been made to the proposed legislation by my office and by staff. Then January 10th and January 24th, I know you'll remember the joint work sessions that you held with the planning board. There was discussion about parking and the impacts of parking, not only the demands on this particular site, but what it might generate off-site as well. There was a discussion about process and who the approval authority would be for the special permit. And then on February 7th, the town board adopted a resolution that created a working group, a 4-member working group. We had Supervisor Katz and Councilwoman Shemtob and 2 planning board members, and they were tasked with looking at the then current legislation and as informed by the joint work sessions that the boards had, and really roll up their sleeves and try to get in a little bit more granular in the details of the legislation. So on February 16th, that working group met. It was a public meeting, and there was discussion again about process, about height, because the draft legislation at that time still had a 60-foot height limit or maximum. And there was discussion around the fact that that might not be the right number, that may have overshot the target. And the task that the working group then asked the planning board and staff to look at was the height, because under the town code, height is not necessarily as simple as just measuring to the
It
highest
wasn't the point. planning board, it was the working group asked that.
The working group asked the planning board to go back and to, so, yes, and so height isn't, if you have a flat roofed building, yes, height is just measuring up to the highest point, but if it's a peaked roof, it's a little bit more complicated than that. The simplest way to think about it is if it's just a simple peak, you're looking at a midpoint between the highest point and the low point of the roof, and then going to grade and measuring that distance. So I think the takeaway from that was, I'll use a basketball analogy because it's March, right? So we missed the backboard at 60 feet, all right? We really had to kind of dial that back and take a closer look at the number and really think about the way the town code requires height to be measured. So staff went back and looked at that, and they generated a memo, and the actual height of the building as proposed is about 48 feet as measured under the town code. So in the current revised legislation, we've got 50 feet now as a maximum. And I say maximum, I don't want the board to think that that's a guaranteed height, that's 50 feet as of right, because the legislation has always contemplated that the approval authority, the town board, in site plan review, could always require a lower height. So it says 50 feet, but if after a site plan review, the town board decided that that really was not the right number, it could be lowered. The working group also, there's further discussion about process. And I think the takeaway there was that the idea that, I think there was an acceptance that the approval authority really needed to be the town board. And that's the way the legislation was originally written. There were some tweaks around exactly how that would play out process-wise, but that remains. The town board would remain the approval authority for the special permit under the legislation. So I know the planning board met a couple of times after the working group met. They met on February 21 and March 7th, and I know the town board received the memo from the planning board just this week on Monday. But that's the process that we have followed in terms of the steps that were taken after the application came in. I just want to go back to what I said about this is legislation. This is not site plan review. There's no site plan application before the town board. It hasn't been submitted yet. We're still at a conceptual level in terms of reviewing the proposal. The legislation you can think of, think of it as legislating for a box, a 4-story box that's going to have certain physical characteristics in terms of height, in terms of lot coverage, in terms of floors, in terms of units, but it is not at the level of detail of a site plan review. So when we're talking about where, how refuse is going to be handled on the site, how lighting is going to be handled, how vehicular access on the lot is going to flow. Is there going to be a singular driveway, or do we need two? Those are all site plan issues. So those there will come a time where they will be addressed after the applicant, if the legislation is adopted, if the applicant comes forward with a full site plan application that deals with those issues, deals with the engineering for the sewer, the water, all of those details would have to be worked out in part of a full site plan application. Parking and where it is, and again, like internal circulation, all of those details would be before you then. And at that point, it's important to know that the town code, so as a special permit, this would become the 19th special permit that the town code provides for. And there's a very well-known and used process for evaluating special permit applications. And that involves referrals, mandatory referrals to the planning board, to the architectural review board, because at that point you have the details. And the architectural review board can take a look at the project and the elevations for the project and the architecture for the project and come back with a recommendation. And the planning board would look at all of the site plan issues and come back with recommendations. You may decide to have further joint work sessions at that point with the planning board when you're working through these site plan issues. But again, it's all downstream. That's not for this process that would be started if you introduce and adopt the resolution tonight, which is just setting the legislation down for a public hearing. Now, that said, we did hear that the planning board was very interested in the applicant providing a model, scale model of the proposed building. And I know that's something that's come up before.
Yeah, that's not new. They actually knew. I had asked for that months ago from the developer, knowing that, at least for me, and I'm sure for many other people, it's a lot easier to understand it when you see it on a model than on a piece of paper. And they agreed to provide that. I think that they wanted models are not cheap, so I think they wanted to understand what kind of proposed legislation they were basing that on before they built it. So now that we have something that's proposed, not final, they can build that, and it's my understanding, they're actually on the call now, I see, but it's my understanding they're gonna try to have that for the public hearing. If not, we're gonna make sure that it will be available during a public hearing, and we'd like to also display it so that people can come in and out of town hall and look at it as well.
Things that they were also going to submit, you mentioned a shadow.
I think there were some shadow studies that were done also, specifically with respect to 149 King Street, and a few other things. I don't know if you want to ask them, but we can finish this first.
Yeah, I mean, that type of the shadow study and frankly even the model, I think would be helpful because two things are gonna happen. As a legislative body, you're gonna be looking at this legislation, getting public comments on it, and deliberating as a legislative body. You're also gonna wear another hat. You're gonna be the lead agency under SECRA. So you're gonna be looking at environmental impacts, and that's where a model may help you assess the massing and the height relative to the street, relative to the other structures that are already there. So that I think is where I think there may be a few provisions in the legislation where a model might inform your thinking a little bit. There's one involving what we're calling the street frontage, essentially, how the building actually interacts with the sidewalk. But that's not a very detailed level. But the bottom line is the model, we've been told by the applicant, is coming, and hopefully it'll be here by the 11th.
And I've been told it's not just a model of the building, it's gonna incorporate some of the surrounding areas as well. I think they're determining how much they can incorporate into the model, but it's certainly going to be able to show perspective. It's not just gonna be a model of the building.
Jeff has his hand up.
I have a question. Oh,
Jeff,
should we-
Jeff, did you have a quick comment on that?
Yeah, so we're working on the model. We're trying to figure out the scale of it because as you go bigger in a model, if we go too big, the building itself will get lost. So we're working on that. We had a call today to determine the area to include, and we're going to come up with some photos to show you to kind of gauge what would work best and show it to you to see how to produce that model and hopefully have it done by the public hearing. Secondarily, we did a shadow study. We submitted it and showed it. It was in the original package we presented, I believe, in June of last year when we showed everything. And we showed it to the residents of 149 King, showing that there is no shadow and also showing the view, what they would have looking down on the project. And they were very pleased with it.
can I ask a question,
Thanks.
Jeff? Will
Sure.
your model actually include 149 King Street?
That's what we're trying to do, to include it and see if it will work and not interfere with making our project so small that it really doesn't show you the project. So we're trying to figure that out. We're running some tests now to see how it'll work.
I'm not sure how it would make it small, in the sense that if we see it along with 149 King, we would have a good overview of how it looks with the area. I don't quite understand the concern about making it small.
I think it at least needs to include the height of where 149 King is. It obviously doesn't need to necessarily include the 149 King buildings, but it needs to show where they are situated in terms of the height.
Right.
Of the
that
building.
would be fine, yeah.
Right? All we're saying is the bigger area you do for your model, the smaller the buildings in that model become. Otherwise, it's not something that's feasible to build as a model. So to define the area that we're doing, we're just running some schedules the architect's doing to see. We're trying to include that as well as other areas so you get a true feeling for the building. And we just want to make sure the sizing is appropriate.
And you're gonna send us sort of a picture of where you think, okay, so we'll look at that, and see if we think it's appropriate.
Good way of thinking about that.
Yeah,
So
that's
the
good.
developer at Chappaqua Crossing did a model, but the model was the size of a good size dining room table.
Mhm.
So all of the buildings were tiny,
Right.
and that might not be what you're looking for here.
Right,
Well, that was a lot larger area.
Yeah, that's true.
And you can certainly have two separate models, one for the greater scale for the area and one that's more direct. I don't know the cost of these things, but it's certainly something that's plausible.
Yeah, and
So-
I have a question about SECRA and the order of things. So this is my first go around with something like this. So what I've seen is that you do a SECRA analysis prior to legislation and passing legislation. But we seem to be doing this in the opposite way, so I don't quite understand that, the order of things.
SECRA has to be done and finished before you adopt the legislation. But all we're doing tonight is actually introducing a draft and then opening a public hearing. When the public hearing opens on the legislation, at the same time, you will simultaneously be doing SECRA review and receiving information about the environmental impacts of the project.
But if we don't know what the legislation will look like mostly, then how can we do an accurate SECRA review?
Well, you know that it's, and I say project, really I should say, it's the legislation. What is the legislation providing or allowing this property owner to build? And that's why I said like a 4-story box, with these characteristics, it's gonna have 45 residential units, it's gonna have this much retail, the parking, just the very sort of basic dimensional characteristics, operational characteristics, so that those facts now can be analyzed for SECRA. So when you know you've got X number of units, you can start to, extrapolate, okay, that's gonna maybe generate an X number of additional students for enrollment purposes, and go from there.
So
And
obviously, we
generally-
can change the legislation as
course.
a result of the SECRA.
And
you
as
know,
a result of public comment, so generally what we would look at is like the worst case scenario. So we know what the legislation is now. So if we know it's not gonna get bigger than what's in the legislation. So we try to look at if it was built to every inch and every size that's in the legislation, what would be the impact? Knowing that if we then, based on public comment and our review, decide to make it smaller, we already know that it's gonna fit within we've already done the kind of worst case scenario under SECRA so that we can always make that fit.
It's even a little, I would say, simpler here now that it's been, the legislation really is just tailored to a single property. Because before, or with any zoning legislation, you do need to look at, not just here, but the entire district, wherever this change would apply, what, like you said, are the not worst case scenario, but what's the maximum build out look like? What are the greatest impacts that might be realized if this is something that goes on the books? Now we're just dealing with a single property, so it's going to be, I think, a much smaller scope and more precise.
So along those lines, so we're considering today a resolution to set a public hearing. That's so that we can then solicit comments from the public that will go on the record that can then inform the legislation. Without setting that public hearing, we don't really have any mechanism to get those kind of comments on the record for us to then incorporate into what will be the final legislation.
Yeah,
Right.
that's the purpose of a public hearing.
Okay.
Before, I just,
Go ahead.
a second, I just want to express a few thoughts before we decide on whether we're setting the public hearing or not. I do think that the North Greeley corridor is a really good opportunity for this town to have a walkable, retail, residential and public space area.
Mm-hmm.
And what I definitely am in favor of developing this area. What I have concerns about is not having done it through a process where we set a vision for the North Greeley corridor before passing legislation for one particular parcel. Because I think that it's a missed opportunity. We could have taken that opportunity to have a balanced and equitable view of the North Greeley corridor. So to have the opportunity for all of the properties there to develop in a more balanced way. So whatever it is that we're going to hear about this one parcel, it's going to be about the one parcel. And it will possibly overshadow, we'll have perhaps a 4-story building that will overshadow the other properties on North Greeley, which may not have the opportunity to develop because 50 North Greeley will have taken advantage of all the infrastructure capacity for the area. And so it's not that I don't want the development, but I want the development to be balanced and equitable. And I'm just afraid that we have a missed opportunity here because we didn't set a general goal for the area. So that's my overall concern, other than, the process for legislating for this one parcel. It's the fact that we are legislating for only one parcel. And I don't want anyone to misunderstand, because it's been said this is nothing to do with returning to a form-based code. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, we could legislate for 3 stories. I don't know what it would be, but the point is that it would have been a vision for the North Greeley corridor that would have been balanced and equitable. And it would have been our vision, but now instead, we're going from a developer's vision for one parcel. And that's really what I regret here, and I just feel that we have a missed opportunity. So in terms of being realistic and doing something moving forward, because I'm not saying put the brakes on this, I'm just, I would like to look at this project within a greater context of what would we want to see for North Greeley, and what would we think of this parcel in that particular context, giving other parcels the opportunity to develop as well. And I don't mean all develop into 4 stories, but develop into something that makes sense in its scope and scale for our infrastructure and what we have.
Okay.
So that's just, those are my concerns going forward here. And I just feel that going into a public hearing with this current legislation is premature. But if that's what the board wants, and we could work with that. But that's how I'm looking at it. And I just want to be very transparent with everyone about my thinking on this.
Thank you. Quick question for you, Ed. I just lost my train of thought. Oh, if a special permit, I just want to understand this, and I want the public to understand this. If a special permit is adopted for this parcel, does that kind of open the gates for other parcels throughout the downtown to say, hey, I want that special permit applied to my property?
No, because the way the legislation is written, there are certain dimensional requirements that the other properties wouldn't meet.
Okay.
And size, location, this is a one-off, and it's not ever going to be the case that legislatively a property owner can say I'm entitled to something because somebody else got it. Zoning is all about drawing the line someplace, and that's your prerogative. And you're doing it here for this property on North Greeley based on a tremendous record and a tremendous amount of analysis and deliberation has gone into trying to solve for the vacant property there, and just an overall what can be done to revitalize that particular part of the downtown. So in my view, there's no reasonable person could say that this is arbitrary, that this is the result of a very long and thorough deliberative process, and it's based on a mountain of data that this board has been reviewing now for years.
Okay, thanks.
So I don't know if now is the appropriate time, but since Vicky shared her comments, I guess I feel like it would be fine to get my thoughts on the project on the record too. And I actually take a different view. I'm someone who I just feel more comfortable with incremental change. And for me, what makes me comfortable about this project is that we're only looking at 50 North Greeley. I'm not prepared to take on the entire North Greeley corridor. I don't know, after, I know, Vicky, what you're saying, that you don't want to instigate a form-based code debate, but I could see how it could turn into that when now we're talking about developing the entirety of the street, when, it seemed overwhelmingly that the town did not want to consider that. And I know that there's a lot of controversy and opinions and thoughts and ideas about 50 North Greeley, and that's why I want to open it up to public comment, and that's why I want everyone to understand that This is just the legislation. We're gonna open it to public comment. We're going to have a model, there's going to be studies done, and everyone is welcome to provide their feedback. But I'm most concerned with just what we're going to do with this one vacant property and how we're going to address the needs and wants of the community and then take it from there. I don't want to rush to build and rush to develop and then we have vacant storefronts because we just didn't have what we needed to keep foot traffic. So that's just where I'm coming from. I'm very comfortable looking at this just a parcel to parcel basis. And I just wanted that to be on the record for everyone since it came up tonight.
And also, Ed, correct me if I'm wrong, just because we're putting this out tonight, it again invites public comment. It doesn't mean that we can't completely revamp the legislation based on public comment. Is that correct?
That's true.
Okay.
And I also wanted to reiterate your point about the referral process, that there's 19 special use permits that the town has issued. And once we issue the special permit, there's the referral process, meaning the planning board gets a say, the architectural review board gets a say. I've been very open, and I think everyone on this board has been very open that we want there to be collaboration with the architectural review board and the planning board. We take what they say to heart. I value their opinions and their expertise, and we're not going forward making those decisions. I know that there are people making, tinkering with the architect's plans. Like, that's why we have experts here. That's why we have these plans. That's why we have these advisory boards. So there is opportunity for them to provide us feedback, and then we go back to the developer and we make changes based on public comment, based on what our experts think, based on what works well with the community. So, Ed, I just wanted to reiterate that and make sure that that point wasn't glossed over, that we're not unilaterally deciding the scale, the mass, the height of the project, that there will be time for public comment and time for expert review of this project.
And that's typical.
It's required.
So, if you looked at Chapel Crossing, for instance, I remember, God, because it was really, really late nights. The legislation was passed, and then we spent a very long time doing site plan approval for that, and
Well, there are actually 3 steps there, right? There was the legislation, and then there was something called a PDCP, or preliminary development concept plan, that the town board set. And then that was then handed to the planning board to deal with the site plan issues. So really a 3-step process there.
So I guess that'll make it my turn, since we're all sharing our
Sure.
thoughts. Generally speaking, perfect can't be a obstacle to progress and the type of development that the community wants, whatever that means. Not necessarily my vision individually or anyone's vision individually, but what it means for the community. Because if we do that, we're going to get nowhere fast, and we're going to find ourselves stepping backwards. I would personally not rather handle this 50 North Greeley on an island by itself. It's a piece of a puzzle, albeit a very large piece of a puzzle, meaning every lot in our hamlet is one of those chips or one of those pieces, and somehow they all lock together or link together. I do think that we have to move forward with this because there's an opportunity to see something that's really positive for this community, but we can't lose sight of it is not an individual plot. It's part of the hamlet, and you can have incremental development and growth parcel by parcel, but I think it's incumbent upon us to understand how it all works together. And there needs to be a commitment, I believe, from this town board, not in any way, shape, or form with those dreaded 3 letters. They're not JMS, well, they could be to some, but FBC to others. There can't be anything like that. That's not on the table. But there needs to be at least a general understanding on what do we want to see. We, again, meaning the community, for North Greeley, whether that's just the west side, whether that's also the east side, whether that's, no one wants 75 feet, obviously, whether that's 30 feet, 40 feet, keeping the current heights, what number of units we're going to see here, the setbacks we're going to see here, that's all the domain, or at least in part, something that's going to come from the planning board, as with any project. And this vote today to move the ball forward, if you will, is not a vote to say we are doing this in the exact verbatim as it's legislated or drafted now. there's a lot of tax dollars we're missing. There's a lot of draw to the hamlet that we're missing. There's a lot of affordability in workforce and higher end housing that we're missing. There's potentially restaurant and commercial that we're missing. So this is a mechanism to move that forward, but I can't stress enough, for me personally, it can be parcel by parcel, but it can't be on an island. We have to see how it works together, and there has to be a commitment to say, if we're going to do this, we have to understand how it works with everything else. And I've learned from my past that clearly those voices are not just ours, there are far more many voices, especially when we're hearing, and that seems to be changing, what could be potentially be coming down from the state, from the governor, and I'd rather we be taking that initiative than it being sort of decided, if you will, for us. So whether it's ARB, whether it's the planning board, whether it's the community, I am in support of this. I'm not married to what it is today. And I look forward to hearing more from our voices, but from everyone out there, not just the 10 of you, but all the folks in the community. So that's my sharing of my thoughts.
Great, thanks. Holly?
Well, I didn't know we were doing this, but
Apparently we
I don't think
are.
anyone did, it's kind of
I don't think any,
evolved.
well,
much like Jeremy and Vicky have said, I do regret that we don't have a bigger picture yet for the North Greeley corridor, and I do wish that we had that, but I think that moving something forward is most important right now. So I'd like us to be revisiting the concept about the bigger picture out there. But I really want to make sure that we move this forward and we don't cut off our nose to spite our face, so to speak, by preventing and not enabling progress while we wait for something bigger. That's
okay, thank you. All right, and then I guess I'll just say really quickly that one of the things that's very important to me as we're looking at potential development of this site under an application that was submitted to us is that we make sure that we have significant input from our planning board, from our architectural review board, from our residents, and all our constituencies. I've already, approached the schools to make sure they want to look at it. I've spoken to merchants. There are a lot of great things about this project. Something that stands out to me actually is that the way this is proposed, a lot of it can be built off-site and then kind of dropped onto the site so that it's not going to really inhibit our merchants and in the Chappaqua Hamlet from being able to function appropriately. It's not going to cause large, traffic issues upon building it. That doesn't mean, again, that it will be built according to the legislation, but I think it's very important to put that out there so that we can solicit formal comments from all constituencies and our planning board and our architectural review board. I think that's very important. And so I would like to see this move forward so we can start soliciting that formal input in addition to the meetings that we've already had.
So I can quickly just run through what I think are the more substantive changes to the version that's being introduced tonight. And I would jump right to page 3 of the draft and just flag the slightly tweaked table there on a minimum required off-street parking. I think, and Sabrina, jump in if I get this wrong, but I think it's fair to say that the big change there is the idea that, and you have to look to the next page to see this, we've taken out the reference to a potential 25% reduction if a car sharing program is implemented. And I think the concern there is that we've heard that the car sharing program or model is a little untested. There's maybe not a great deal of data about its efficacy. So rather than jump to 25% and kind of put that number out there, dial it back a little bit, and let's stick with one space per unit residential if a car share is provided. And again, the thinking is that we don't know how much efficiency would be achieved. So we're gonna hew pretty close to the one per unit minimum requirement that we started with.
Well, and so that just reminds me, and the applicant's providing a, parking study as well, and I guess I can say this, the town board is interviewing, or has interviewed, consultants that would, really be hired by us to look at those parking studies that the applicant is gonna bring us. So, that could change if based on their analysis, they do say, you know what, it is shown that there can be a reduction or there shouldn't be a reduction at all. That's something this process is gonna end up informing.
Right. I think the takeaway with respect to this change is that we're starting with a more conservative approach with respect to parking.
Mhm.
And we'll see what the data tells us.
Mhm.
Then I would go to page 5. There are there's new content there around the energy standards that would be built into the legislation. I'll just let the board read those.
And what are these based off of? Is this the new state law?
That's a simple
No,
question.
the energy standard actually exceeds the state law. It is a working document that is in effect, that the state is trying to implement. But what it does is it creates the ability to do better than the stretch code currently does. The code that we're referencing in this code is probably 2 years out from becoming state law. But there's two elements to the energy code. It's adherence to additional energy standards, which require actual internal testing for air release. It also asks for applicants to adhere to a program where they can get tax rebates for different conservation techniques that they would implement. So it's really a two tandem. We're asking them to employ a higher energy standard, but we're giving them an avenue to recoup some of the costs of that energy standard. And
That's
so-
really
so
interesting.
co-
Oh, sorry to interrupt.
No.
Is that available for single family?
No, it is not. This is for commercial construction, and a multifamily building is considered commercial construction.
So I'm sorry, just to understand that a little more.
Sure.
So if there are no rebate type programs available though, we're not saying you can't do that work.
That rebate is known in the industry for being a long-standing program for this type of development with these energy standards. There's no concern that that rebate will not be available years from now if the site is not developed and we still have this in place. The energy code trending that's been occurring will completely negate that. Meaning this energy standard is what we're going to have to live up to. At this point in time, the state, or it's actually federal, I believe, is offering these energy incentives that do not have been on the books for a while and they will not disappear. We in order to come up with this standard, we spoke with professionals in the energy industry at the state level, representatives who work, the building inspector who works with other professionals in that industry. And we feel we have a solid recommendation that's not unreachable, but something that can be reached and something that does offer some assistance to reach it.
So I hear what you're saying,
Yeah.
but given that we can't predict the future as to, budget cuts either at the state or the federal
Sure.
level, is there a way we can say, a type of building that is currently for which rebates are currently available?
And that's what it does.
Because we can't necessarily predict that they will be available in the future, even though I hear what you're saying, that there's no indication that they won't be available, but.
We didn't tie the legislation to the actual rebate. We tied it to the type of improvements that would
Would qualify for the rebate.
would qualify for the rebate. So
But I would say under current, as of the
I-
date the
I-
legislation's enacted.
Well, there's no reference to rebates at all.
No, I know, but that program is a rebate
Yeah.
program.
Right.
Well, the standard though, the standard is a objective uniform
Yeah.
standard, right? So
Yes.
if then that'll remain constant presumably.
We hope so, yes.
So there's either a little bit of help getting there or there's not. And then maybe this is a good time to point out too that there's a little relief, there's a provision in the legislation that would provide an opportunity for the applicant to come in and ask for some modification, basically under a hardship or
Mhm.
feasibility standard. So if we ever had to cross that bridge, there's a way over it.
Mhm. Okay.
So the only other, I think, substantive change I'd point out is on the next page 6, and we've already talked about it, it's the height. So 60 has become 50. And that's essentially it. That's the legislation. The resolution that is on your agenda is again to refer it to the Newcastle and Westchester County Planning Boards and set this down for a public hearing for April 11th.
Okay, perfect. And again, just to clarify, it does not mean we're adopting the legislation. It would solely mean that we're authorizing those referrals and the ability to solicit public comment that's on the record, which then may inform changes to the legislation. Okay. Thank you. All right, anyone else have any thoughts, comments? Okay. All right, so we are going to move in again, you know, for people here who may have public comment on the legislation, there's gonna be a time to give that on April 11th and thereafter. Okay, so we're gonna move to you, Rob, our esteemed controller, to give us an update on the financials. Thank you, Serena.
Hi, thank you. First couple of things, I'll jump ahead one item in the agenda and just talk about the water rents. For any of the new board members, this is a procedure we do every year at this time. We take the town code provides any water rents that are 180 days past due as of tax collection as of April 1st. Our town requires us to put them on the tax bills. At the end of January, you get kind of a scary letter in the mail if you are in danger of this, and it lets you know this might be a tax lien on your property. Basically it goes on your tax bill. If you pay your tax bill, it's not a lien. If you don't, it becomes a lien along with the rest of the unpaid levy. End of January, we send that letter out. They get 6 weeks to make good. Some of them do, a lot of them don't. We see on this list, the amount is typically similar every year. We do see probably a good 50% or more are people that are frequent flyers. They just, rather than pay their bill quarterly like you're supposed to, they have it re-levied every year. So the applicable penalties are added too, and it goes on their tax bill.
And then it just gets recouped when they pay their tax bill.
Yeah, exactly. So typically we don't shut water off in the town, and this is our mechanism to get any unpaid water rents.
Perfect, thanks.
The other thing I wanted to mention, it's a proposed action tonight, and it was a memo to me to authorize authorization to commit 2022 operating surplus. We've talked about this for probably a couple of years now. The town is in negotiations to purchase the property on Joan Corwin Way. Unfortunately, it's not proceeding as fast as we would like. What my memo seeks is authorization to commit fund balance. So rather than it just get dumped into unassigned fund balance at the end of the year, we're gonna take it and commit it for the purchase of this property. I think it's a little bit cleaner when we do the financial statements. That way it doesn't kind of overstate our unassigned fund balance. This is an obligation we've been expecting. We know the exact amount. The procedure just hasn't followed through. So that's what I'm asking for at this time. And I'm kind of trying to tie it into the sale of 48 Hates Cross. Basically, we sold one town property. We're gonna buy another one. Still gonna be a profit there, but kind of tying those together.
So I think that's a good idea, but just a question on that. If for some reason the purchase of that property fell through, would we be able to reassign those funds?
Yep, absolutely. Town board can do that. So at that level of fund balance, there's different designations. If the town board commits it, only they can uncommit it, so it couldn't be used for anything else, but it could be at your say-so.
Okay.
Any questions?
I had a related question though,
Okay.
that I'm springing on you right now.
Okay.
Did you see in the state budget, there's a proposal that for any in-rem properties now
Yes, I did.
that we may take over,
Mhm.
that we can only recoup the taxes and not any.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
wouldn't get any surplus from that. Yes, I did see that proposal, yeah. 48 Hates Cross was a really rare property that was a large property that had a lot of outstanding taxes on it, and the value of it was actually higher than what was outstanding and what we were able to sell it for. We haven't done a lot of the in-rem processes in town. We've done it every couple years. Nothing as lucrative as that. What's the other one? Hidden Hollow, Jill?
Yep.
We were able to sell that, but I think it was kind of, we sold it to a developer that I think had to demolish it and rebuild from the ground up.
Yeah,
So,
it was a knockdown.
yeah, so we haven't been in a situation like this, but I did understand that, and basically we would be able to recoup just the delinquent taxes and the remainder would go back to the property owner, is what I heard.
Right.
Hates Cross, was an
It was
extreme
abnormal, yes.
outlier,
Yes,
probably never to be seen again.
yes.
It was being in the right place at the right time, things had to happen that typically don't happen.
Mhm.
So I don't want you to think that that's, a
Yeah.
source of, it's not.
Okay, yeah, I know there are some municipalities who actually process in-rem proceedings like every month. And this is would be a significant impact, so I wanted to just get a feel for the type of impact that would be on our town.
And we were talking with Chrissy in the last couple of weeks. The amount of delinquent properties we have is is almost down to nothing at this point compared to what we've had in the past. We've had many millions of dollars of delinquent taxes dating back to, I think, 2011, and I don't think we have anything older than 15 or 16 at this point. And yeah, I think might be only about $1 million total or even less than that. So that process cleaned up quite a few. There were a couple other properties that we recently got big payments on that were severely delinquent.
Right, and the other thing that the board should just be aware of is that everyone is aware that there are some zombie type properties in town, and they're really a different animal, so that's a situation where the bank owns them, we're made whole, but the property is vacant and we wish it was an MREM and we could take it, but those are instances where, like the old Calgar property on North Place, where the bank owns it, the taxes are fully up to date, we don't know why they don't sell it, we wish they would sell it, we invite them to sell it, but and they would recoup their money someday. But so most of the properties, that's the scenario. So the bank actually pays the taxes because they don't wanna lose it in rem because they're valuable and they will be able to recoup their investment. So again, Hates Cross was just, never happen again.
Okay, unfortunately. Okay, I'm just gonna share my screen if this goes through. Let's see.
It's like, right, I've already been using it, but it's not.
Rob, I think you might wanna make it larger.
Shoot, I've run into this before with, on my screen, it looks like it's full. Carrie, do you have a fix for that?
Dear help a coming.
Usually have to go to view.
My screen was
It shows up fine on my
It's
computer.
late. and I
It
can't
looks
see
good on
that at all.
his. Where is it, back here?
Yep.
Let's see, go to slideshow. Okay. Let's try to get back to the screen, sorry.
Yeah.
Alright, let's try this.
Do you want me to email it to you, you guys can run.
That will be our next stop if this doesn't work.
Please hold while we're experiencing technical difficulties.
Do this, now go to file. No. Ay, 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 I'm sorry.
Okay, I'll just go huddle around the computer.
Okay, one more time, ready? Which is make sure we have the right one open.
I think it's-
Wednesday,
it's that one.
5:45, this one?
Yeah.
Okay. Now we're gonna go back to Zoom. Share, and then we're gonna hit this play right here.
Oh, it worked. Don't touch it. It worked.
You gotta go back. Where are you?
Just trying to get, I'm not good with your touch screen. Basically, we wanted to play
Yeah. Here.
slideshow. In the beginning.
Yeah.
No,
Whatever you did before, I can work from that.
We're
All right.
probably good with
If we're
leaving
good
the
with
thing on
that,
the side.
Can we see this?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Okay, we're back.
Shows up great when I practice because I did practice before I came in. Okay, so I'm just gonna go over some of the financials and trends that I expect to see from 2022. As the board knows, I actually have my audit next week, and so these are not audited financial statements, and some of these numbers can and probably will change. But I have a good idea where we're trending, and I just wanted to let the board kind of have an idea of that, just so we have no surprises along the way. So we'll talk first about the general fund, and I will say 2022 was a very good year for the town, both in on the revenue side of the ledger and the expense side of the ledger. You'll see that my theory of budgeting has always been very accurate on expenses and very conservative on revenue. And we find that if you're short in revenue, it's very hard to make that up on the expense side. If you're $100,000 or $200,000 off in revenue, trying to cut $100,000 out of your budget in November or December is almost impossible. Fortunately, we haven't been in that predicament. So general fund for 2022, right now, the revenue looks like it's trending up about 19% versus budget. I'll go through a couple of those reasons why. One of those is interest earnings. We're actually up about 689% against budget. I think everybody has seen the interest rates and seen what the Fed has done over the last 12 or 15 months. At budget time, when we were preparing the 2022 budget in the late summer of 21 and early fall, nobody could have predicted the interest rates would increase at a quarter point almost every month for about 6 months straight. So we had no idea that was coming. That was, in these terms, very welcome to us. For the economy, probably not so good, but in particular for the town, very good. Another number that we saw just tremendous increase was mortgage tax, over 100% of our budget in mortgage tax. Unfortunately, we see already trending that that's not going to continue with mortgage interest rates in the 6s and low 7%. That sure slowed the market down. So while we did have more than double our mortgage tax in 2022, 2023, the first 4 months that we've seen figures for are about half of what we were looking at in 2022, unfortunately. Building permits, another banner year for that, about 140% versus budget. We had some of the building permits come in from Chappaqua Crossing. I think we'll have some more money coming from that in 2023. Hopefully that will stay pretty steady. That has been pretty steady for us over the last few years. Recreation programs came in great, and that spans just about every program that IKE has. That goes from adult athletics, it's youth athletics, it's summer camps, it's senior programs, etc. Across that whole board, in the total about, I think, 900,000 total in all the programs. That was up about 21% versus the budget. Sales tax, another good year with sales tax. Again, for another number that I'm less optimistic in 2023, I think we all see the economy slowing down. I know purchases of large goods like automobiles and appliances, et cetera, it's trending downward. The first couple months, the numbers not that far off from last year. They are down from last year from what I've seen so far, but I wouldn't expect to repeat 2022 this year.
Has the percentage of sales tax, have we gotten a larger percentage?
Yeah, back from about, I think it's 2019 or 20, I don't recall exactly. Starting in August of that year, the county began collecting an additional 1%.
Right.
And the town has definitely seen several $100,000 more a year
Okay, good.
than we had in the past. And probably the only real significant revenue category that was off was parking permits. I know everybody, if you look at the parking lot today, looks a lot fuller than it has probably in the last, 6 or 8 months. Unfortunately, the timing of that was kind of weird. We moved the parking permit season. It went from June, we went to September, we went to December to try to kind of maximize our revenue. What we found out was people didn't really come in December. They've been coming in January. So a lot of the parking permit revenue is realized in January 23, not in December of 22. As it turns out, it's not really going to hurt us for 22, but that number was off significantly from last year, or rather versus budget. On the expense side, we were about 3.14% below budget, which is a pretty good number. Legal expenses, not sure how, but we did a pretty good job with legal expenses, and we didn't have as many costs outside of the retainer as we had maybe budgeted, so that was down about 15% versus budget. The employee benefits category, and that's a category that accounts for in the general fund over $6 million of the general fund. That was actually down close to 1%, but that's a pretty good number when you have to consider there's healthcare in there, there's workers' compensation that can be variable, and there's also retirement system that has been pretty volatile over the last couple of years. On the expense side, some of the areas that were trending up, gasoline 68% and utilities 53%. I think everybody probably sees that in your personal life. We're all paying more for both of those things, and the town is as well. IT expenses were up about 10% over budget. If you remember last year, we had to make some pretty significant changes for security-wise. We brought in a whole new security suite from our IT vendor, and we didn't foresee that again at budget time. But when we went to renew our cybersecurity insurance, we got a ridiculous renewal rate, and that was because we didn't have some of the security features that they needed. We now have those in place, fortunately, but it did come at a cost. I duplicated that legal expenses because I liked it so much, employee benefits. So that was the general fund. We are looking at a pretty nice surplus coming in at the end of 2022. So I'm giving you the good news first. We're going to go through the results of 2022, and then we're going to also look at what's on the horizon and how we will possibly be spending some of these surpluses that we're looking to see.
And Rob, are you at this point seeing that there might be funds to contribute to that open space fund?
We'll talk about that. You'll see a pretty daunting list that's coming up. So again, that will be the board's decision as to whether they want to place anything there and how much they might want to place there.
Mhm.
But we did talk about seeing the full picture before you do,
Good.
and you will. So going into the highway and the refuse funds, the highway fund, the revenue was up a little over 3%. We did get about 33% more CHIPS funding from the state than we had anticipated. There was another program that they added this year that gave us an additional amount. You'll see interest earnings was something that was up again across the board. And we started to get some FEMA reimbursements from ESIAS in. So that's what that is, the $73,000. On the expense side, we had a pretty light year last year. I'm not going to say anything about this year, but in 2022, snow removal costs were down versus budget. The overtime about 9%, and the salt about 4.69%. So That's kind of a moving target. We have left that steady in the budget over the last probably 5 years or so. Some years we hit it, some years we miss it. This was a good year for us. Knock on wood, we'll hope 2023 will be as well. Employee benefits, following the trend from the general fund, those were also down about 1.49%. And road paving is up about 21%. So we kind of had a list of roads that we wanted to pave going into the year, and one of the items that increased drastically in pricing throughout the year, actually was week by week, starting in the spring, was road paving. And we kind of had a sense that we would have a surplus, and we knew we were going to get a little bit more money from the state at that point. So we went ahead and kept with our road paving plan. Rather than scale it back to fit what we had in the budget, we kind of still paved what we had anticipated paving. Jill, do you know the exact amount? It was around 7 miles or something to that effect?
That sounds right.
Yeah, so, you know, we made that decision. It's not gonna hurt us financially to do that. We are over budget in that line, and we will move some contingency funds towards that, but, you know, I think we thought that was the right decision at the time. Refuse and recycling, also some good news there. On the revenue side, we did get quite a bit more compost and mulch sales than we thought. I think we probably had a lot more yard waste and debris that was processed and then turned around and sold. And we had some good news on the expense side there. The transfer site charges were actually down about 16%. So that's a moving target. We never know exactly how much we're going to collect. That's based on exactly what's dropped off at the transfer site. So that was good. So in both the highway fund and the refuse fund, we had allocated fund balance. If you remember, the refuse fund, because of the contract being renegotiated at a much larger rate, we had a couple years cycle of allocating fund balance, rather large amounts of fund balance. So the good news there is we'll still use fund balance from the year, but it'll be about $100,000 less than we were anticipating. So that's good news. Looking at the water fund, we had anybody with an irrigation system knows we had an extremely dry summer last summer. So when that happens, we sell a lot more water, and it means more revenue for the town. So again, interest earnings, like the other funds, with the fund balance we have in water, interest earnings were up significantly versus the budget. This water sales, the commercial sales were up about 28% versus budget, and that includes Hudson Hills, that includes Whippoorwill Country Club, I think. Hudson Hills had 1 month over the summer, I think it was about $100,000 water bill. So the residential sales were up little under 7%. On the expense side, you're going to see some of the costs that are going to rise with the increased consumption, like the variable cost of water and the power at the water treatment plant. Those are up. Variable cost of water, we were pretty close to the budget, just about 1% off. The power for the water treatment plant, just kind of like the utilities for other town buildings, that was up about 50%. And I think the board recalls we had to go back to the board a couple times for treatment plant chemicals, where in the middle of the contract, they literally would not honor our price anymore for some of the important chemicals that we needed. The cost of water for excess per capita was up close to 30%. And then a couple other items, the standby generator was $224,000 we ended up paying for 2022 after our generator exploded. And we did refund a surplus from the prior year to the Village of Pleasantville, $320,000. So that's 2022. We'll have the audited figures probably in late May or early June. And at that point, we'll talk about the fund balance and what we might want to allocate. And so now I'll move on to some of the capital projects we have. So first, the good news, these are all projects that we have confirmed grant funding for. You see, they're all pretty pricey projects, and we were able to secure funding at least up to 90%. You see at the far right column, cost to town of Newcastle. We're hoping that becomes 100%. Most times it does for those FEMA projects. If the federal government doesn't kick in 100, Right now, they're at 90%. A lot of times the state will kick in that 10%. So, but that's kind of the outside cost that the town could incur. So, I think it was Isaias that knocked our pedestrian bridge out, on Route 120. We're in the process of, having that repaired, and that's a FEMA project. Shether Road, part of that road got washed away. Don't recall the storm. It was this year, I think. You know, if that was Ida, I can't recall, but it was another one of the storms, and that's FEMA and East of Hudson are giving us money for that. The water main replacement, we have 4 different roads that we're replacing water main on. That's what we're gonna use our ARPA funds that we received, that came out after COVID. Each municipality in the country received ARPA funds. That's what we have allocated ours to. Byram Lake Road culvert, that needs to be replaced. That was another washout from one of the storms. That's coming from FEMA. And the Upper Minkle Dam, we've talked about that for years and years of decommissioning. I think that's finally gonna happen this year. We've secured funding from Westchester County and FEMA for the full amount of that project.
That's great.
So that's the good news, and we're out there working, Sabrina's department, Sabrina Kellen, they're working pretty hard, helping us to secure these grants, and that's very important to do these projects. Next list, not as fun. Most of these are projects that we're paying for right now, at least the majority of ourselves. What I've kind of tentatively listed is if we were to bond for all of these and not use any fund balance, this could be potentially what the cost is, and just looking down some of these, and a lot of these are back of the envelope estimates. We know there are projects that are out there, we know they have to be done. Some we've had engineering studies, some we're not that far yet. So just going down from the top, we still have yet to close out the downtown hamlet. We have some engineering issues and some things that need to be cleared up with that, but we do know that project was overspent and we will have to cover the remainder of that. We have the Millwood Sidewalk project that we had funds, multimodal funds that we reallocated from several years ago when we were gonna put a sidewalk on 117 and realized we couldn't do it. We shifted those funds to Millwood Sidewalk, but unfortunately, as that project has gone along, we've incurred cost overruns there, and we're gonna end up having to probably borrow some more money for that one too. The community center roof that's already been completed, we paid for out of fund balance, but we'll end up having to borrow for that. DPW fuel tanks, again, another project that we borrowed money several years ago for. That cost came in about $250,000 over what we had borrowed before. Millwood Park, those are the lights. We had a SAM grant from, I think that was Senator Harper.
Senator Harper,
for that
yes.
one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we had a SAM grant there, so we had some of that funded. That was a $125,000 grant. 250 is the excess cost beyond that we have to fund. So anything highlighted in dark are projects that have already either finished or have begun. Couple of items that are in the planning stages, the HVAC here at Town Hall. If you spent any time here, you know it's pretty inefficient, and I think it's about 30 years old. So we're Walter's keeping it together with I don't know what spit and glue, but that'll probably have to be addressed. The fire alarms at both Town Hall and DPW have to be replaced, so those are next up on our list. So not to go through everything, but this is a list of what we're looking for. And so when I talk about fund balance, the good news, it's great. The news for 22 is very, very good, and you'll see that in May. What's on the horizon is will be challenging. So I don't have firm numbers for a lot of these projects. I anticipate going out to bond at the end of this year. We have typically gone out to bond anywhere between 4 and 5 years. We last borrowed in 2018, so we will probably have to borrow this year. I will say though that in spite of what you're seeing interest rates on probably the retail, the home mortgage side, the retail bond rates are not crazy, fortunately. So I've seen a rate sheet in the last couple of weeks, and they're in about the 3 to 3.5% range, which we've had them at 2.5, so that's not.
And some of these projects, I know, I don't know if the board knows actually. So Congressman Lawler called us and arranged a meeting and wanted to know what projects we were looking for funding for, and we gave them a list, and a number of those are on them. So hopefully some of that money will actually come through. I know he was appalled that the amount of money we're spending on our generator for the Millwood Water Treatment Plant.
I'm appalled too.
And we talked about a number of, specifically these water projects, so
Yeah.
hopefully some of that money will come through and decrease what we're
Right, and
bond.
we have
When
a
did that
consult-
happen?
That was a couple weeks ago. Couple weeks ago, I think.
I don't think we knew about that.
No, I don't think it wasn't with the board, it was just a meeting with me and Jill.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, 2 weeks
Also-
ago, maybe.
Rob, did you send us this presentation?
I didn't, but I can.
Okay, because over here, probably Holly and Ally, maybe Lisa could see it, but
If
I can't see it.
squint.
Okay, so I can send it to you.
So for those of us
Yeah.
back here, so
Absolutely, I
we,
can send it to you.
I was listening to you carefully, but
Sure.
if we have to make decisions,
Yeah.
we really need,
No decision's imminent, and obviously, once we get to that decision stage, I'll give you more information. And Lisa and Jeremy were on the board before in 2018 when we borrowed, and I laid out a plan to the board. We borrowed, we had debt service, and we used allocations of fund balance to pay that debt service, and I anticipate doing something similar to that. It was a multi-year plan. I actually had it up through 2023. Figuring this would be about when we would borrow again, so I will update that when that time comes, and definitely keep you informed on how we're gonna pay for that. But to Lisa's point, we are definitely, unfortunately, I think we got some bad news on a couple of these that we applied for that we didn't get. And I think, Jill, that it looked like our application was fine, that just the pot of money ran out, if I was reading that correctly. So there wasn't anything wrong with how we applied for it, it just, there wasn't any money left. So, we're diligent about that. Sabrina keeps looking. Each year we review the consolidated funding app to see if there's anything that we apply for. We've kept in touch. That was nice to hear from Congressman Lawler, to have him reach out to us and, inquire. And it's great, Assemblyman Burdick's been very helpful. Peter Harkin's been very helpful. So, we've got a lot of help there, and we'll continue to look for money.
The challenge for everyone is that the CFA projects change from year to year. So
Yep.
it's not like, 1 year we apply for it and it's like, oh darn, we didn't get it, we'll try it again next year. Next year, they take and they shift the focus ever so slightly, so your project no longer qualifies. So you end up having to go through your list of basically shovel-ready projects, just trying to figure out, which one fits into that square peg, best. So it's a challenge, but we've certainly been working on it with some degree of success, so. Certainly with the FEMA things, far more so than anything else.
And the last slide I have is, you're definitely not gonna be able to read that, and I will,
No.
I'll forward that to the board, but it's my cash flow analysis for the year, and it's just kinda how I monitor, and it's not an exact science. I do put a lot of work into it to determine, but basically it helps me to see the ebbs and flows of the cash coming in and out of the town, because we do have a lot of cash coming through the town. We do collect property taxes for the schools and for the county, and so that money comes through us and it goes back out. So we've got to make sure we have cash, and in fact on April 5th we'll make the schools whole, even though we won't be 100% collected. So I do have to say, I think we're as close as we've been in many years. I think the last I looked, we were only about 800,000 short, and we're typically at least $1 million. So that's money we unfortunately have to advance to schools, and it's the same situation with the county. We have to make them whole in October as well. So this time of year, actually March is our lowest cash flow month of the year, because we haven't started collecting property taxes yet. So basically, and we've had 3 months of the year, so we're kind of living off our fund balance, which that's okay, because we have a fund balance. Some aren't that fortunate. Some people have to take out tax anticipation notes or short-term borrowing. We've never had to do that, and I don't anticipate having to do that. But when I forward this to you, you will see in great detail that I'm on top of your money.
Do you get any funding from
So-
from the schools?
John, we're not asking questions.
We don't
now.
ask questions.
Yeah, sorry, it's a work
Well,
session.
I just saying,
Um,
why are you doing something for the schools that they don't pay you for?
Because we're required.
So, Rob, could you take a minute and just, I know you assured the board, but just to assure the public that though we had monies in Silicon Valley Bank,
No.
that,
Signature
they,
Bank.
I'm sorry,
Signature
Signature Bank,
Signature
that
Bank.
they have
Yep.
all, everything's been recouped and we are comfortable.
Yep, that's correct. Unfortunately, Sunday night, as I was reading through the news, I saw the horrible news that Signature Bank was taken over by the feds, and unfortunately, we had some of our investments in that bank. So on the good news side is they paid a tremendous amount of interest this year, and we made a lot of interest in the last year or so from them. The bad news is we won't be doing business with them anymore. We did pull all our money out of there. We did have a conversation with the auditor on Monday, and he suggested that, and I concurred with him, so we did take our money out of there. We do have another investment consortium that we'll put it in that's paying good dividends. So, but just to remind the board too, there's very the depositories that I can put money in for the town are the laws require them to be very restrictive. So I'm not able to invest money in the stock market. Even it's just very CDs and investment banks, et cetera. And any depository that does business with the municipality has to fully collateralize all of the funds. So we were never at risk. You've heard with Silicon Valley, you heard with Signature, if you had more than $250,000, which we did, it wasn't FDIC insured, and that's correct. But that's why all these other depositories have collateral requirements. We receive collateral statements on a monthly basis, and it's actually one of the focuses of the audit. They actually review all our collateral statements to make sure that we have collateral for all our funds. And they're required to collateralize us at 102%. So in the event that there's a deposit in throughout the day that they don't capture, I think they do the analysis at the end of each business day and collateralize you at the beginning of the next morning for the amount that you closed the prior business day with. So that was never at risk, but disconcerting nonetheless. So we'll look for another place for that money.
Okay, thank you for being on top of that.
Sure.
All right, any questions from anyone on the board, other than to email that to us?
I will.
And we're gonna put it in the newsletter, a link to that, if that's okay as well.
Sure, that's fine.
All right, thank you. All right, so next up, we are going to speak about our CSEA fact-finding recommendation, and Ally?
So due to a conflict, I have recused myself from CSEA negotiations.
So you don't have to go too far, though. All right, thank you. So, do you wanna start, or well, tonight, we're gonna be, discussing the town's, negotiations with our Civil Service Employees Association. The collective bargaining agreement, as people may or may not know, between the town and the CSEA expired on December 31st, 2020. We have been negotiating with the union since then, but we've been unsuccessful in negotiating a new successor agreement. So by law, on March 1st, 2023, we went to a neutral fact finder, both parties, appointed by the New York State Public Employment Relations Board, and he issued his recommendations actually on March 1st for a successor agreement. And a summary of the fact finder's recommendations are as follows. The compensation shall be amended so that effective January 1, 2021, current CSEA members will receive a one-time 1.5% lump sum payment. Also effective January 1st, 2022, CSEA members shall receive a 2% salary increase with retroactive payments made to current CSEA members. Effective January 1st, 2023, CSEA members shall receive a 2.25% salary increase. Effective January 1st, 2024, they shall receive a 2.25% salary increase. And that 2.5% salary increase will also occur on January 1st, 2025, 2026, and 2027. Then longevity payments shall be amended as follows. Effective January 1st, 2023, they'll be increased by $150 across all longevity steps. And effective January 1st, 2024, longevity payment shall be increased by $50 across all longevity steps, and then increased again by $50 across all longevity steps on January 1st, 2025. 3, the town shall provide employees with an additional in lieu of day for Juneteenth, which shall convert to sick time if not utilized. This in lieu of day shall be converted into an additional holiday if town hall is required to be closed on that day. 4, CSEA members shall be entitled to cash in up to 3 unused vacation days from their 2021 vacation accruals. 5, home confinement policies shall be implemented during an employee's working hours while that employee is utilizing either sick leave or workers' comp leave, subject to specific enumerated exceptions. 6, employees shall be entitled to out-of-title pay when required to perform the duties of a higher job classification for at least 3 consecutive workdays, except for those employees working during an emergency weather event, whereby such employee will be compensated for all time worked at that higher job classification. 7, a revised alcohol and drug testing policy shall be implemented, which includes but is not limited to a revised disciplinary procedure. So at this point, I would like to poll the town board members who are not recused concerning whether they are in agreement to accept those fact finders' recommendation in its entirety. So Holly?
Yes, I'm in agreement.
Vicki?
Yes, I'm in agreement.
Jeremy?
In agreement as well.
Perfect, as am I. And unfortunately, since the town has not heard back from the CSEA concerning whether it is willing to accept the recommendations of the fact finder, the town is prepared to continue with the dispute resolution process provided for in the Taylor Law. In accordance with Taylor Law, Section 2093E, I have submitted a copy of the findings of fact and recommendations of the fact finder, together with my recommendations for settling the dispute to the town board. I did that earlier this week. And I'm going to actually read, so hang in there, my recommendation letter to the town board, and that is as follows. So I sent this on March 13th. The collective bargaining agreement, and this was me to the town board with the exception of Councilwoman Shemtop. The collective bargaining agreement between the town and the Civil Service Employees Association, the CSEA, expired on December 31st, 2020. As discussed herein, the town and the CSEA have attempted to negotiate a new agreement since June of 2020, and ultimately, having failed to reach an agreement, the parties submitted their dispute to fact-finding. After a hearing before fact finder Tom Linden on March 1st, 2023, the fact finder issued his recommendations for a successor agreement. A copy of the fact finder's recommendation is attached here too. Pursuant to Taylor Law, Section 2093E, I submit that the town board should adopt the fact finder's recommendations for the reasons set forth herein. A, bargaining history. Amidst the uncertainty of the COVID-19 pandemic, on June 26, 2020, the CSEA demanded to begin negotiations concerning a new contract. The parties met approximately 8 times between October 29, 2020 and March 25, 2021. At the conclusion of these negotiation sessions, the parties came to a tentative agreement on March 25th, 2021, which was then reduced to writing. On June 1st, 2021, the bargaining teams for both the town and the CSEA signed a memorandum of agreement, which I'm defining here as the 2021 MOA. Unfortunately, the CSEA membership rejected the 2021 MOA. Thereafter, impasse was declared and the parties engaged in mediation between February 2022 and July 2022. Mediation was likewise unsuccessful and the parties proceeded to fact-finding in November 2022. Despite the fact finder being appointed by the New York State Public Employment Relations Board, the parties continued to engage in negotiations for a successor agreement. And on or about November 18th, 2022, the parties came to a second tentative agreement, which was then reduced to writing, the 2022 MOA. Unfortunately, again, the CSEA membership rejected the 2022 MOA. As such, the parties proceeded to a fact-finding hearing. A hearing was then conducted before, fact finder Tom Linden on January 5th, 2023. On March 1st, 2023, the fact finder issued his recommendations that I just discussed for a successor collective bargaining agreement. The fact finder recommended that the 2022 MOA be implemented with 3 modifications. 1, that the contract be extended by 2 years through 2027 with salary increases, as I just discussed, of 2.5% in both 2026 and 2027. 2, that the 1.50% lump sum payments still be provided to current unit members for 2021. 3, that the alcohol, marijuana, and drug testing policies disciplinary section be amended by providing that for a first offense, a 20-day suspension without pay be implemented, along with a mandatory completion of an employee assistance program. And for a second offense, the town could proceed with disciplinary charges in accordance with Section 75 of the Civil Service Law. And I attached a copy of the 2022 MOA to my letter. Though the fact finder's recommendations differ from the town's bargain for 2022 MOA, the independent fact finder found them to be reasonable in light of the surrounding circumstances. Indeed, the salary increases recommended by the fact finder are in line with salary increases provided to similar bargaining units in other towns in Westchester County. Based on the foregoing, I submit that the board should adopt the fact finder's recommendation. And just as an aside, I wrote that the CSEA members in Newcastle are already one of the highest, if not the highest paid employee groups as compared to similar employees in all of the other towns in Westchester County. Similarly, CSEA members currently receive generous longevity payments over a 25-year career in comparison to similar bargaining units in other towns in Westchester County. So please note that in the event that either the CSEA or the town do not agree to the fact finder's recommendations that I am recommending today, in addition to my recommendations submitted to the town board set forth herein, the CSEA may submit to the town board its recommendations for settling the dispute. The town board or a duly authorized committee thereof must then set and conduct a public hearing at which the parties must explain their positions with respect to the fact finder's recommendation. Thereafter, the town board must take such actions as it deems to be in the public interest, including the interest of the public employees involved, by imposing a settlement of the negotiations dispute for a period of 1 year. However, under the Triborough Amendment to the Taylor Law, in such circumstances, the town board may not change any terms of the expired collective bargaining agreement without the consent of the CSEA, including but not limited to salary. So lastly, given that the town board, as we polled, has agreed to these recommendations, I would like to set a hearing which shall be conducted in public for Tuesday, March 21st, 2023 at 7:15 p.m. At such hearing, the parties would be required to explain their positions with respect to the fact finder's recommendations. All right, anyone have any questions on that? Okay, so we'll move on. Anything further from council?
We'll proceed on Tuesday.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right, now I would like to stop speaking and we're gonna consider an Ali, yes, come back. We're gonna consider an application for a filming permit and waiver for 50 Overlook. Jill or Ed, do you wanna give us a little background on that?
So we have been approached by a filming company that is interested in filming for a significant number of days at 50 Overlook in Austining, which is within the town of Newcastle. The board is of course aware of the fact that we have a film ordinance within town, and pursuant to that, filming is only allowed for 7 days within a 12-month period. The property has already met that 7-day period, and so the individuals that are interested in coming in to talk to us have asked for a couple of different waivers. First waiver is that they're looking for us to take and actually waive that 7-day time frame within the 12-month period, and also noise ordinances. So and also the within our film ordinance, there are certain times within which filming would be allowed. That waiver as well. So I know that they're here tonight. Vanessa, is that you?
Yeah, that's me.
Come on up.
Come on up.
I also printed out some stuff if you guys wanted it for reference.
Sure.
Why don't you just take and introduce yourself for the record?
Sure, yeah. My name is Vanessa Vandernorm. I'm the assistant location manager for Cold Harbor, which is the working title for Severance Season 2. I don't think I printed enough. I wasn't really sure.
I don't know what you're
It looks like plenty, but we can share.
Okay, here we go.
Thank you.
Yes.
I think you have the exact right one. And you can give the extra to Christine right there.
Thank you. Oh, yep, no problem. Sorry.
Do you need a copy? You're okay.
Okay, I know. I've looked at them a lot.
Okay, fine.
You can borrow it back. if
Oh,
you
okay.
want.
Actually, I can pull it up on my phone. If that's easier.
Okay. Entirely.
Yeah, or you just give it at the end.
Yeah, she
Fine,
just
for
needs
the
to make it
record.
part of the
Sure,
record.
yeah, no
Thanks.
problem. So we are looking to film at 50 Overlook Road. It was actually hand selected by Ben Stiller, who is the director for Severance. He did last season, and he's also doing this season as well. We have reached an agreement with 50 Overlook Road, and they're aware of our filming and in support of it. When I had initially reached out to Ms. Shapiro regarding the film permit, I was informed that there was 50 Overlook had already used their 7 days, which we were not aware of. I then proceeded to speak to the 5 neighbors that are directly next to 50 Overlook, because it's kind of, if you look at, there's a map. There's the second one on the second page. It's kind of set back from everyone. It's not like, there are neighbors obviously, but it's not very close neighbors. Anyway, I've spoken to all 5 of the direct neighbors, and they're aware of our filming, and they are being compensated for our presence during our time of being there.
So can we assume by that they're also in favor of you filming?
Yes, I would assume so. They're all very excited. They're also all fans of the show, which I think helps.
Did you provide the board with copies of the consents?
I did, yes.
Okay,
They're all in there. I didn't do one for 50 Overlook, but they are on board.
Do they get a notice that this is going on and that they have the opportunity to come and speak to us?
I didn't know that they were supposed to.
I'm asking Jill
Not that I'm aware
because I think that would be important.
of. Well, they
But it seems like they're all signing consent.
they signed consents.
Oh, okay, I just heard people say, I assume that they.
No, the consents are in here, I think.
Yeah,
Is that what
they're
you
in
said?
there.
Okay, so
They're all
those are
there.
Yeah, here.
consents to the waivers.
Or just consent to like us filming for when we've like told them that we were planning to come film. So our current filming date, which is
This
actually,
3 days.
it's actually shifted.
Mhm.
We've reduced our number of filming days to just 2 as opposed to 3.
Mhm.
And we've also reduced the amount of prep days that we would need in order to get the home ready for our set.
Mhm.
So it's now 7 days of prep with about a week of rehearsal.
Mhm.
And then it's about 5 days of restoring the home back to its natural, original state. For prep and wrap, it's obviously think more like independent contractors. They're all under our payroll. They're all our crew members, union crew members. But there's obviously not as many people when it comes to an active day of filming. And they will all the vehicles will be parked on private driveways, either on 50 Overlook or with the 5 neighbors, which they are all made aware and they know the usage of their driveway with like our purposes.
Excuse me, but I may also, Vanessa has spoken with our chief of police
Yes.
regarding traffic and traffic flow on the property. There will be an officer there during all activities, and the chief has approved the plan for the traffic and the parking.
Wait a minute, are we approving this today?
If that's up to the board.
That would be the hope.
So let me ask you a question, in terms of noise,
Yes.
what are you anticipating with noise? And have you notified these neighbors, cause I don't know.
Yes, they're all aware of the noise. We will be parking a tractor generator on 48 Overlook. And that is about 50 decibels at 25 feet. It's a movie quality generator. It's supposed to be parked pretty close, that way you can't hear it. Obviously, like it was that location was specifically picked by our electricians, and they know like what's good for noise issues.
Is that camper, is that what you're referring to on your map?
No, that's actually like a camper that would fit in the driveway, which is for one of the actors. The generator would go right next to it. And then that neighbor is aware of what's going in his driveway, and he is also electing to potentially put himself out for the evening.
Did we get this in the backup documents? Or is this the first time?
No,
I've
this is
seen-
the first time I'm seeing this.
So so we have a number of pages here. I'm just concerned we're being asked to approve something that we're just seeing.
Most of it was in the backup.
That's what I'm asking. I hadn't seen.
I haven't seen the map.
I hadn't seen all
Yeah, the
of
maps
this.
are-
Page
Some of it's
31,
in
yeah,
there,
try
but not
page 31's
this.
got the application, but I think
Right, but not all of,
No, certainly
it's just
not.
an application.
So,
It's the application, it's the waivers from the neighbors,
Okay,
And-
sorry, and that's on page 31?
yeah,
So-
31 to 45, 46.
and Jill, do we think that 200 feet from 50 Overlook is an appropriate distance for waivers for these neighbors?
I also did all of Overlook Road.
Okay.
So if you look on page,
You're not applicable, so they.
Yeah.
It's because it's wooded property that's in Yorktown.
yeah, so I went all the way from, well, let's say 43 Overlook all the way down to 22 Lakeway Road, and I just did a general resident letter notifying and left my phone number on it, stating if you have any questions or concerns, please reach out to me. And I haven't received a phone call from anyone.
Okay.
So we don't have an answer from them.
Well, we haven't I have answers from the 5 neighbors that are like directly next to the home. The homes that are along Overlook Road that kind of trickle out, I have not received a phone call, but they've all been given a letter stating it, which I think I put the letter in here.
The reason why I asked, like.
I think the letter's right here.
I just went to Google Maps and looking at 48 Overlook to 44 Overlook. It's 210 feet, but that's not a direct route, that's not as a crow flies, so it'd be shorter as a crow flies. So we're NA for 44. What type of decibels are we talking about, say 100 feet away? Like, is it gonna be disturbing those 44?
No, they wouldn't hear it.
And the staging that wouldn't impact them in 48? I'm just looking at.
For 48, we have an agreement with them.
No, I understand that,
Sorry.
but my point being that if you're staging a generator at 48, right?
Uh-huh.
And you said at 50 feet it was 200, what was the distance you said before?
At 25 feet, it's 50 decibels.
So just curious, what's at a double or triple that? Do you know?
Yeah, you can't hear it. It's like
You can't
pretty,
hear
yeah, it's very silent.
I think he's asking if we have the approval of 48 Overlook and 46, do we need the approval of 44? It's kind of listed as an NA here.
I think the reason why it was just listed as an NA.
What's there?
There's nothing there. It's just a home. Like, we're not planning to put anything like by their house.
But can they hear it? We're concerned that,
Lighting,
right, there's
The lighting-
lighting, could be noise, and certainly, additional traffic on that road
Sure, of course.
could
Yeah.
still impact them.
There wouldn't be any lighting. All the lighting would be over towards 50 Overlook with
Mhm.
on the actual property.
Okay.
And then in terms of noise, if there were any noise, obviously, I can reach out to them and, discuss with them and do some sort of compensation for any noise disturbance that they potentially could have.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So the waivers for how many extra days?
2, well, plus,
Well, so we're requesting 13 days of prep, which are only usually Monday through Friday. They
and
only
2 of filming.
2 of actual filming, correct. We've filmed in neighborhoods before that are very similar to 50 Overlook, like in Pleasantville. We filmed there the first season, all of the neighbors, it's a very tight-knit community as well, and they, we had a very successful shoot season 1, and they welcomed us back graciously for season 2, and we're very excited for us to return. We've done it in Nyack, we film in neighborhoods very often, and we try to take care of the neighbors as best as possible and understand that it is a circus that comes through, but, we try to make it a fun circus.
And what are the hours? What are the hours? Sorry to ask because
No,
I
it's
just wanna
fine.
hurry up and not go through all of. the
Sure, yeah, so for on prep days, it's 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. It's a typical like a 10-hour day. And then for our filming, we're doing half overnight or half during the day and half overnight since they're mostly night scenes.
What
So
are the hours?
they're approximately 12 p.m. to like 3 a.m. or 4 a.m.
And everyone who signed the waiver knows those hours?
They do.
Yes, I really wish you would have put that on it.
4 a.m. So those are for 2 days?
Correct, yep. So it's Wednesday, April 5th, and then also Thursday, April 6th.
It would have been good if the hours were on the waivers.
Okay, I mean, I can also revise and do like another one as well. And then on their actual physical agreements for their compensation, it has the hours listed.
Okay, well, we don't need to know the compensation, but we do need to know that they're aware of it. It is interesting that other film companies that have gone through there have gotten petitions from all the neighbors on the block, not just some of them, because they're all gonna be impacted by at least traffic.
Okay.
in principle, I have no objection to it. I think it's great that you wanna come here and it's good for the community, generally speaking, but I would feel more comfortable if we can just confirm, especially if a week's not gonna make a difference. If we can just confirm that those other neighbors make another effort to reach out to them, so at least we can say there was multiple efforts to advise them and that they understand a little bit more detail what's gonna happen. If there's no objection, I would have no objection.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. We're happy to, reflyer and
I don't want someone knocking on our proverbial door or literally on our glass door out there saying, we didn't know, why'd you
yeah,
do
we can
this?
definitely.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of that poor gentleman who came to us with
Right.
a photographic and we just don't want that.
We had someone who was
Don't
very
want that
upset
here.
about some filming nearby his
They were
property.
miserable.
Got it. Yeah, no, I understand. It's
Yeah,
we
we
wanna make
also
sure
had
that
a
everyone
filming on
contacted.
Hates Cross, if you recall, and sound really does carry.
If there's
Yes.
approval, I'm on board.
As am I.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be my only question, is to make sure that all of the neighbors are fully aware of what they're
The
saying
hours.
okay to.
Sure.
So would you be, and you wanted to start when?
Monday.
Monday.
Yeah.
Okay.
We originally were hoping to start tomorrow, but just due to everything, and we have our own scheduling issues, so we've just asked to push to Monday.
So,
Wait, I just one more question. How do you get consent from the neighbors? Do they sign something?
they're right here. The waiver's
Okay.
right here signed.
Those are okay.
But I would, in the interest of time, because I understand the constraints that you have, if it was not feasible to have them re-sign waivers with the dates on it, if you even had their email addresses and sent an email to all of them and copied the town board and we got email approval from them that, yes, I know the dates and I'm okay with it, I think I could get comfortable with that.
But they would need the emails though.
Could you
I
give
have
us-
all of their contact information.
Right.
Oh, you do? Oh, sorry.
Could we accept this subject to if they wanna fill out
Well,
Monday?
I don't
Subject
know that
to-
all the neighbors have been consulted, and that concerns me. 'Cause
The 5 neighbors that are going to be the most impacted have been all communicated with. I have their emails. I know them on like a first name basis. Which that's very easy to get a re-signature for the letter. I can also submit a different resident notification letter for the homes that will be affected with more vehicular traffic on the road, stating the filming dates and our approximate times, and then I can either ask them to sign, which I'll just have someone camp out until they come home for a signature, or I can, just.
I think that would be better
Okay.
if you can do that,
Okay.
and then scan it and email it to the board.
Yeah, I think the board needs to have signatures from the entire block.
If that's possible. And then legally, then, since we don't meet again before Monday, assuming we get all that this week, can we
Well, you
kind of
could,
pull the board and then ratify it on Tuesday?
Well,
No, because they want it
Tuesday's a
Monday.
day too late, right?
Yeah.
So what we could do is the resolution that's in the packet, we could just tweak it and indicate that the town administrator, the compliance will be subject to approval by the town administrator.
Yeah, but I'm just concerned that, I have a neighbor on the phone who's texting me feverishly as we speak. Do you want to open it up to them and allow them to speak? I'm just, we're requesting all neighbors, be notified and sign off on it, right?
Yes. But certainly if the neighbor has a question right now, I would like to hear it, since this is something we're gonna consider tonight, if they wanna dial in.
Okay, Carrie, you wanna open it for Nicole?
Hi, Nicole.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, we
Yeah.
can.
Okay, so I want to start by saying that I am not opposed to this request, the request for the waiver, but I think we need to establish some parameters, because the house at 50 Overlook, the Luss House, which is a very desirable house for film companies, and I don't think anybody on Overlook Road does object. But the last film company that we embraced were required to have a petition signed from everybody from my house, 39, down to 50 and the house next to them.
Well, that's what we were talking about, Nicole, having not necessarily a petition, but having them sign a waiver.
Okay, but not just the 5 houses around
No, the
50.
block.
Right. The whole block. The other
Yes.
thing, I was just curious what, and I'm sorry I didn't get her name, what she means by compensation. Is that compensation for cars parking in the driveway? Is that compensation for noise? What is that compensation for? The last film company parked their cars, and as I say, I don't have a particular, opinion on this, but the last film company found it better for them to park their trucks in the parking lot at the railroad station and shuttle their staff over. As opposed to asking all of the neighbors, including myself, if they could rent our driveways. So I'm wondering what that compensation entails.
Yeah, so I don't know that we necessarily want to get into the contract terms between the production company and the individual neighbors. I think suffice it to say, if they consent to this, I'm sure if their property is being used, they're being appropriately compensated.
We can discuss, we'll come by tomorrow with a letter and we can discuss any of your concerns.
So did you hear that? Vanessa said she will come by tomorrow with a letter and discuss.
You know what? It's not that I want to get into information about the contract with neighbors. I'm just want to be clear that when, and I'm sorry, I don't know your name, says the neighbors are being compensated, what are they being compensated for? I don't care how much. Are they being compensated for noise?
I think they're being compensated as they deem appropriate.
For the usage of their driveways, for using their driveways.
For the uses of their driveways.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
So I just think you just need to get it.
All right, thank you, Nicole.
Okay.
They're gonna come by your house.
Okay. You know what? I want to tell you something. I actually helped write the petition for the last film company to get everybody's signature.
Well, maybe you and I
So
can talk.
I'm not opposed. I'm not opposed. I just want clarification. And I think going forward, given that this house is going to be used for film companies going forward, I don't know if everybody's aware of what the Luss House is.
Yeah, we are.
We need, there needs to be something, some standard protocol. So when the next film company comes in, you say, this is what you need to do. This is what we expect. What are you going to do, et cetera.
So we do have standard protocols. What's being asked here is a waiver to some of those, but certainly I think they should be getting signatures from everyone on the block.
Yeah, I'd be okay if we have clear consent from all the.
So I
from
think
the
your
whole body.
idea, Ed, and it seems like that's the consensus here, your idea of making it subject to would be fine. But,
Yeah.
So basically, we're gonna resolve that we are going to, adopt the resolution subject to you obtaining all of those consents as determined by our town administrator. So that way, we will have approved it tonight, but Jill has the final sign off, once you get those.
Right, so I'm gonna need the prep dates, and then the hours on the prep dates, and also the hours on the film dates. Okay, you could just tell me it's the three, whatever it is, but it should be reflected on the consents.
And maybe my recommendation would be, if you're redrafting this waiver, maybe send it over to Jill, just so she can look at it and say it looks good, so that it just saves you time from having to do it again.
Sure. Yeah.
Is there
Okay?
clarity on the additional consents that we're asking for, either by address, or do we otherwise know who we're talking about?
Is it the list that I have on, does that suffice?
All the NAs,
Yeah.
I think it's fine.
I think so.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, and
Actually, I
we'll
have,
be involved.
sorry, one quick question. So all of the houses along the route to get there, that's kind of off the very main thoroughfare, have they been alerted that there will be increased traffic?
Which I'm not local to the area, so I'm not really sure
What
which road
streets
that
do you mean?
is.
So I don't have the street map, but it's Pines, Pines Bridge that you turn off of?
I don't know that everyone needs to be notified that some trucks are gonna come down there. I think that road definitely, because they'll be parking and turning around but I don't know that we need to notify, the entire West End that trucks may be coming through.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, I was thinking about just this neighborhood, I think it's 2 streets, but she's got most of them already. But it was a question, no.
I have not notified them,
No
but
worries.
if I need to, then I can.
Okay. All right, so I think we're good?
Yeah.
All right, good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So just, if I have all of that approved and I have the signatures, then we would be able to begin prep on Monday.
Yes.
Right,
Yeah.
so I will issue, if that's the case, then I will issue you the permit.
Great.
Okay, once I get all the documents.
So, and you have all of Jill's contact information?
Yeah.
Okay,
We've
perfect.
been chatting.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yes. Oh, yeah, he just needs it for the record, okay?
All right, so leave this.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right.
All right, so I think now we're moving to administrative items.
So our administrative items this evening are 2 payment of claims, one for retro from March 8th of 2023, the next was March 15th. Authorization to enter into an IMA with Westchester County regarding our enhanced 911 services. This is a renewal, something we do every several years. Next is authorization to attend a conference, that's for BART, it's for joint waterworks, New England Waterworks, rather. Next is highway school, so our assistant general foreman and our general foreman, Bernie Riley and John Maduris will be doing that. Authorization to attend, to solicit bids for the Millwood Water Treatment Plant, for the emergency generator fuel tank replacement. This has got an estimated budget of $470,000. So this is just the tank replacement for the generator, not the actual generator. It's something that we had planned before the generator, we ever had trouble with the generator. Next is authorization to purchase water maintenance materials. This is for gate valves. It's from Code in Maine. It's just shy of $35,000. just so the board's aware. Let's see, authorization to share services of another New York State county regarding bids to purchase a dump truck. We're piggybacking onto Onondaga County's bid. So Onondaga County went out for dump trucks, and because they got a competitive bid, other municipalities are able to basically take advantage of their good work. So we do this on a regular basis, we call it piggybacking. And as long as they did all the proper notices, we're allowed to basically borrow their hard work and get the benefits of ordering a truck. Next is we got a banner request for Community Day. It's coming on September 9th. For 2023, we've got an award of the camp bus for Chappaqua Bus, Chappaqua Transportation rather. We're getting a 2023 bathroom trailer. It's gonna be just shy of $9,000 from United Site. It's an 8-station bathroom trailer for camp. Next we've got, we're still holding the change order for Mickle Dam? Yeah.
So,
Okay. Next, we've got a cash bond agreement for a property on Seven Bridges Road. It's to guarantee some tree replacement. And the next is declaration of surplus material, so it's a police car, a 2008 Rock Explorer. That's the preliminary step that we need to take in order to be able to sell something at auction. Let's see. And we're going to I guess the other resolutions we're just gonna we're gonna go through, Christine?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So that's it. Any questions on the administrative items?
All right. So before we move to our resolutions, I just wanted to ask the board, one of our resolutions today, number 8, is an authorization to set the public hearing for the Recreation and Parks Master Plan. I wanted to just see if the board wants to do that. It was gonna set it for April 18th, so we would have plenty of time to look at the document before then.
And is there any issue with the fact that they haven't had a chance to review it before they set the public hearing? Otherwise, we were just gonna kick that resolution.
I think it's fine, I should have mentioned it earlier, I forgot
Okay,
that it was
all
in the
good.
packet. But
Plenty of
if
time
if the
to-
board's comfortable setting the public hearing, that's your problem.
It's the same day we were gonna
I'm
pick for next
personally
week.
comfortable with it. I know the amount of work that went in that. I feel that, you know, it's appropriate to solicit public comment on this. But does anyone have an objection?
No.
Okay. All right, so then why don't we move to resolutions? Holly, you want to start?
Absolutely.
Why don't you do page 1 and then Al, you'll do page 2, et cetera.
I move to retroactively approve the payment of claims in the amount of $850,428.59, 2022 expenditures totaling $148,128.75, and 2023 expenditures totaling $702,299.84, listed on the summary, AP check register, and detail voucher detail reports, all dated March 8th, 2023. Checks were printed and distributed to each claimant listed on Wednesday, March 8th, 2023.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I move to approve the payment of claims in the amount of $517,798.54, 2022 expenditures totaling $301,884.78, and 2023 expenditures totaling $215,913.76, listed on the summary, pre-check writing report, and detail voucher detail reports, all dated March 13th, 2023. Checks will be issued and mailed to each claimant listed on Wednesday, March 15th, 2023.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I move to approve the change in title for Miguel Fedriel Vargas from Seasonal Engineering Aid 0547-01 to Administrative Intern 0169-02 within the Development Department at the rate of $45 per hour, effective retroactively to March 8th, 2023.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Do you want me to keep going?
Do you want to go to the next one, Ally?
Sure. I move to adopt the following resolution. The town board hereby appoints the following: Diane Thaler, Sarah Finch, Jennifer Simon, Georgia Schwartz, Stella Schwartz, and Alita Cruz to the LGBTQ plus committee effective March 1st, 2023.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye. I move to adopt the following resolution. Do you want me to read the whole thing of this one? Yeah. Whereas Casey Taub was a Chappaqua resident, beloved Horace Greeley student, and varsity soccer player who in 2017 lost his valiant battle against pediatric brain cancer at the tender age of 16. And whereas the Taub family has been committed to youth soccer in the town of Newcastle, both at the ASO and high school levels, and whereas the loss of Casey was felt deeply throughout Newcastle and in the soccer community as a whole, and whereas the Friends of Casey Taub submitted a request to the Recreation and Parks Commission and determined it met the criteria for the renaming of a recreation and parks facility and provided a recommendation to the Newcastle Town Board. Now therefore be it resolved that the Town Board hereby wholeheartedly supports this request and formally declares Upper Gedney Field be renamed Casey Taub Field, and be it further resolved that all expenses related to this dedication have been paid through fundraising by private entities, and as such, the Recreation and Parks Department shall take all necessary steps to organize the official dedication ceremony on March 31st, 2023.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
This one? Yep. I move to authorize the town controller to commit the amount of $863,465 from the 2022 operating funds for the purpose of obtaining the property located at 220 Joan Corwin Way.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, approval of the Newcastle and Mount Kisco water rents and tax liens. I move to adopt the following resolution. Be it resolved that the attached schedule of charges for unpaid water for properties shown on the tax rolls are hereby fixed and determined by the board and certified to the supervisor of the town of Newcastle. That such amounts are levied against the real property as set forth on the attached schedule. That the same be raised by tax upon the real property in the town of Newcastle, liable therefore at that time and in the manner provided in the town law and Westchester County Code, and that the amount of such tax be stated in a separate column in the annual tax rolls of the town of Newcastle under a column entitled Water Rents.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Can I just mention on the previous resolution, the Casey Taub, the date was changed to April 14th.
Oh.
A resolution was sent late today, just changing the date for the ceremony to April 14th. So
So moved.
Okay.
So move it again.
I
Just-
made that note,
okay.
so I just wanted to make sure
Just
that you
in case
didn't
you're
announce
listening,
it
got it.
and so
Thank
you all have
you.
it on the
Okay.
calendar. So there won't be any
That's better.
confusion.
Okay. And authorization to set a public hearing on the Recreation and Parks Master Plan. I move to adopt the following resolution. Let me see. Okay, it's not that long. Whereas the town board has received and reviewed a draft 2023 Recreation and Parks Master Plan, which updates the existing version of said master plan and reestablishes the town's goals and actionable objectives in light of current needs, resources, opportunities, and community input. And whereas pursuant to 6 New York CRR, paragraph 617.5, subsection C, 24 and 27, adoption of the Recreation and Parks Master Plan is a type 2 action under the New York State Environmental Quality Review Act, for which no further action under SEQRA is required. And now therefore be it resolved that the town board schedules a public hearing on the Recreation and Parks Master Plan of the town of Newcastle for Tuesday, April 18th, 2023, as at the town of Newcastle Town Hall at 7:30 p.m. or as soon thereafter as reached on the town board agenda that evening.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Jeremy?
All right, I'm gonna read most of this because I think it's important that the community knows what we're doing and that this is not an actual vote to pass the legislation itself. This relates to setting solely the public hearing on the proposed North Greeley net zero carbon legislation and to make referrals April 11th, 2023. Whereas the town board is considering the adoption of a proposed amendment to chapter 60, which is the zoning of the town code, also called the proposed local law, which was submitted to the town with various supporting materials on September 20th, 2022, that would establish a new special use permit for mixed use residential buildings and meet certain green building standards. And whereas by resolution adopted November 22nd, 2022, the town board referred a revised version of the proposed local law to the Westchester County and Town of Newcastle Planning Boards and declared its intention to serve as lead agency pursuant to SECRA. And whereas on January 10th, 2023 and the 24th, the Town Board and Planning Board held joint work sessions to discuss the proposed local law. And whereas by resolution adopted February 7th, the town board from the four-member committee, that was both the town board and the planning board for consideration. Whereas on February 16th, the working group held a duly noticed public meeting to discuss these provisions. Whereas the town board has had an opportunity to review and discuss the proposed local law as revised in accordance with recommendations of that working group and town staff, and believes legislation should proceed to a public hearing. And again, this is not a vote to actually pass any legislation. Now therefore be resolved, the town board hereby refers the annexed proposed local law to the Town of Newcastle Planning Board pursuant to Town Code 60-600 and Westchester County Planning Board pursuant to General Municipal Law 23-9M and Westchester County Administrative Code, and be it further resolved that the town board schedules a public hearing on the proposed North Greeley net zero carbon legislation for Tuesday, April 11th, 2023 at Town of Newcastle Town Hall, 7:30 p.m. or as soon as thereafter is reached on the town board agenda that evening.
Holly, one second.
Oh, second.
All in favor?
Aye. Is it back to me?
Back to you.
Alright. I move to adopt the following resolution authorizing the acceptance of a cash bond, whereas,
Go straight to the where at the
I
bottom
can
if
go
you're
all
not
the way.
sure.
Okay.
Now there.
Now therefore be it resolved that the town board of the town of Newcastle hereby authorizes the acceptance of the aforementioned cash bond agreement. Be it further resolved, the town board of the town of Newcastle hereby authorizes the supervisor or her duly authorized designee to sign the cash bond agreement along with all other documents necessary to effectuate the purpose of this resolution.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Ed, are there any changes to this resolution about a film permit?
Yeah, we could just talk them in after what's read.
Okay.
What's here is read.
Okay.
Okay, so I move to approve the waiver of the 7-day permit limitation set forth in Town Code Section 65-6A, subject to the applicant's compliance with all of the mitigations as measured and measures described in this letter to the town administrator dated March 1st, 2023, along with all town ordinances applicable to its activities. And
Let me also offer, subject to the additional notice to the residents who've already signed waiver forms and subject to notice to the residents, I'm gonna just read them, okay? At the following addresses, and these are all on Overlook Road, 44, 43, 41, 40, 39, 36, 35, 32, 29, and 25, and in addition, 22 Lakeway Road, all subject to confirmation by the town administrator.
Okay, yeah.
So if someone could so move
Yep,
that
so moved.
motion as amended.
so moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, can I have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Stole that.
Aye.
All right, good night, everybody. Thanks for being with us.